Have you ever wondered why sometimes you feel that the whole world has a magnifying glass about your steps? Well, dear friend, maybe it's you who gave them the map and even an instruction manual. Today we're going to talk about something that in theory we should all know but happily ignore. There are things that you should never tell, and no, I'm not talking about state secrets, but about those small details that might seem harmless. But in the wrong hands, they become a circus public. With sold-out ticket, Stoic philosophy teaches us to value control, silence, and discretion. Why? Because what you don't say can't be used against you, and what you keep for yourself is yours. Yours alone. So before you open your mouth and give away the power of your life to others, stay and discover those 9 things that you should always keep under lock and key, prepared well. Don't miss the last thing, because you will be speechless. But before you start, listen to this story that will help you better understand the wisdom contained in this material. Once upon a time, there was a young man named Carlos who lived in a quiet neighborhood of the city. Carlos was kind, observant, and always willing to help others. However, he had a peculiar characteristic. He kept his innermost thoughts very well. One day, at a meeting with friends, someone proposed a game called Tell Us Your Biggest Secret. Everyone began to share anecdotes, some funny, others embarrassing. When it was Carlos' turn, he simply smiled and said, "My biggest secret is that I learned that not everything should be shared." His friends laughed, thinking that he avoided the game. But no one insisted. What they did not know was that Carlos had learned this lesson years ago in a very special way. When he was a teenager, Carlos had a diary where he wrote down his dreams, fears, and the little stories that happened in his life. One day, fully trusting his best friend, he decided to share a diary entry, a confession about his feelings towards a girl in his class. His friend, although at first he kept it a secret, he couldn't help but tell another friend. Soon the whole school knew about Carlos' crush. It was not a dramatic or destructive experience, but it taught him a fundamental truth. There are things that are too precious to be shared with anyone. Over time, Carlos learned to keep certain ideas, emotions, and plans to himself, only for himself. Not because he distrusted others, but because he understood that some things lose their value when exposed to the judgment or curiosity of others. He knew that there were secrets that protected his peace of mind, his self-esteem, and his focus on life. Sharing less did not mean being less close to others, but respecting the boundaries between his inner and outer worlds. That day, at the meeting with his friends, Carlos returned home thinking about how grateful he was to have learned that lesson. There was no resentment in his heart towards his friend from the past, only a deep understanding that just as we don't share our house key with just anyone, we shouldn't share the innermost treasures of our soul carelessly. The moral of this story is that not everything in life should be shared. Some things, like the most ambitious dreams, the deepest fears or plans, even the process, are like seeds that need to be protected to grow. Share them at the wrong time or with the wrong people, it can expose us to unnecessary judgments or even damage our confidence. Learning to keep certain secrets is not an act of selfishness, but an act of self-love and wisdom. Before starting with the first lesson, if you find these videos useful, I encourage you to subscribe and activate notifications to stay informed about the latest news. We start 1. Your next move. Have you ever noticed how sometimes when you have a project, an idea, or one purpose, people seem to put their spoon on the plate before you can take the first bite? It's not that they explicitly ask you, but they make it true. The business of telling everything to others seems like a national sport, but beware, because talking about your plans before playing your cards can be the first step towards disaster. In a nutshell, sometimes it's better to keep quiet and let your achievements speak up for you. It's tempting, right, to tell everyone what you plan to do, how great it will be to get you excited about your next big idea. We've all been there before, so don't worry. The difficulty is that talking passionately about your ambitions might make people nervous, not because you're doing a great job, but because you've previously done it, started, and now everyone has something to say about what you do. To put it another way, if you tell your opponent in advance that you're going to move your queen to this square, it's not a smart move, because the surprise factor is gone. This is the same with your goals. If you share too much about your plans, you give people the opportunity to interrupt your flow, question your strategy, or, worse, criticize you before you've had a chance to do anything meaningful. This is where Stoic philosophy comes in. The Stoics teach us that emotional control and science are crucial to reaching our goals, and that if you reveal your intentions too soon, you don't just put yourself in the crosshairs. Negative criticism, but you also let your emotions and expectations run amok. Waiting, being still, and exercising self-control over our words and actions help us stick with it without turning away. You don't have to reveal your next move to everyone, so start by learning to maintain a certain amount of mystery. When you feel tempted to discuss your big plan, remember that some things are too valuable to share ahead of time. It's not about mistrusting others, it's about protecting your energy and your intentions. It's your life. This doesn't mean you should be closed or secretive with people you trust, but it does mean that unnecessary noise won't help you. In fact, the chances of your goal being achieved are much higher if you focus only on what you can control and not on what others think or say about your plan, your path, your success, and as the Stoics well knew, control over what we share is part of the control over what we get if you keep telling everything ahead of time. The only thing what you'll be doing is giving others the power to tell you what's right and what's wrong, and believe me, the last thing you want is for others to steal control over your own plans. So the next time you're excited about a new project, keep a little mystery. Do it shows what you can do without having to explain everything before you do it. As they say out there, silence is gold. Wisdom is cultivated in anonymity, and actions speak louder than words too. Your financial life, the temptation to tell the world about your achievements, your income, or what you have in the bank is real. I know, not the fruit of a good talk about what you have achieved or of being the center of attention in a conversation about how a fortune is being forged, but you have stopped to thinking about what point you stop being a successful person and become just a reckless person. This is where the Stoics have something to say. Controlling what you share is the key to living a quiet and safe life. Because, dear friend, not everything that glitters should be told. Financial life is like a cake. You have a secret recipe, one that has cost you time and effort to create. Now imagine that you put it on the table. You break it into pieces and start to distribute them among everyone who approaches. Maybe a neighbor, a friend from the gym, or even your colleague at work. Have you ever wondered who will take the biggest share? Sharing too much of your cake can leave you with nothing. People sometimes, out of envy or pure curiosity, start to see what you have, what you've done, or what you plan to do, and your financial security can be compromised by that innocent chatter. Social media, for example, is like a giant window to the world, but it's not always advisable to open it wide. Sharing every purchase, every investment, or every achievement may seem tempting, but that doesn't mean you should. The dangers are real. On the one hand, those around you might feel jealous or try to take advantage of it. From you to another, you could attract people who will unknowingly put at risk what you have built. Prudence is essential. First, think before you speak. That's the basic rule. Sometimes your financial life is not a topic of conversation that needs to get out of your closest circle. Unless you are part of a group that needs to know those details for practical reasons, keep your mouth shut. Not everyone you need to know how much you earn or what you have in the bank. Instead of sharing your achievements, try to focus on the steps you have taken to achieve them. Instead of telling what you have, talk about the effort it has cost you to get there. This, in addition to helping you avoid risk, it gives you the opportunity to inspire others without going into details that can jeopardize your stability. Another strategy is to learn to say no. If someone asks you about your finances, especially those who aren't part of your inner circle, you can simply give a vague answer or redirect the conversation to another topic. Remember that the people you really care about will respect your privacy, and those who don't probably don't deserve to know more. Finally, maintain your financial goals and your investments in private. Not everyone needs to know your plans. In the world of Stoic philosophy, one of the most important principles is the control of your desires. The idea is not to be greedy, but wise, and to know that not everything you want to share is necessary for your well-being. The point here is clear. Your financial life is yours, and you should not give it to your others as if it were a gift. In the game of life, prudence and silence are more powerful allies than you think, since protecting your wealth ultimately protects your peace of mind. Sometimes the secret lies in what you choose not to say. Not everything you have to give needs to be shown to the world. Silence is more important than 1,000 meaningless words, as Epictetus once said. There are moments when it feels like your life is a movie, but not one of those epic ones with lots of action and adventure. Instead, it's one of those dramatic comedies that happen in a typical home, with family disputes and little fights between neighbors that become a common topic of conversation with friends, neighbors, or even on social media. Have you ever considered if you should be there, though? Here's the secret. What happens at home stays at home. No, it's not a movie line. It's the secret to keeping your life peaceful and private. The first thing you need to realize is that not all conflicts should be made public. No matter how spicy the gossip is or how tempting it is to share that story that makes you feel like the king of the party. Because, let's face it, once the family chaos is broadcast, it loses all context and only cheap gossip that doesn't solve anything. This is where the Stoic philosophy can help. The Stoics teach us to keep control over what we can control and let go of what we can't. So if your family is in drama mode, why should you give them the power to make it a public scandal? The secret is in privacy. Family conflicts are mostly internal issues that need to be resolved within the four walls of your home without the intervention of outsiders. Because at the end of the day, who better than your family members to understand what's really going on? The key here is being selective with what you decide to share. Your sister just called you toxic. It's okay. But that's not material for a post-viral. Keep your composure and evaluate if it's really something that should become a public issue, and if you find yourself on the verge of telling a story that could create a war between family members, just shut up instead of airing the matter. Look for a solution with those involved directly. In addition, it is always essential to respect private space. Avoid telling everyone about the disagreements you have with your relatives. It is not necessary to involve anyone else in the dispute, because in most cases outsiders will only stoke the fire with their unsolicited opinion. Problems should be solved at home, not on social networks or in conversations with third parties. Do not let the matter become a constant topic of conversation with the whole neighborhood. If you have a conflict with a family member, the wisest thing to do is to face it directly with him or her. Don't let it become a gossip that goes around all over the place, because chances are no one has a real solution and outside opinions will only complicate things more. The best way to deal with the situation is to face it face to face with the honesty and respect that both you and the other person deserve. And finally, empathy is key. We all have our own point of view, and understanding that is essential. If you are able to put yourself in the shoes of the other, it will be much easier to reach an agreement and put aside unnecessary grudges. The solution is not always to be right, but to understand the motivations of the other and find a common ground in the end. Conflict is inevitable, but how you handle it is what really defines your family's course. Keeping certain issues within the walls of the home is more than a matter of privacy. It's a way to protect everyone's emotional balance. Preventing intimate details from leaking outwards not only helps resolve conflicts, but also keeps your life outside the media circus of gossip. The Stoics would say it simply: control what you can control and leave the rest out of your head and out of your life. As Marcus Aurelius said, who talks too much about what happens in his home forgets that peace is built in silence. For your generous acts, let's get to the point today. It seems that we have forgotten what it really means to do something good. How many times have you seen someone help someone else just to record it, photograph it, and publish it on their social networks? And worst of all, how many times have you fallen into that same temptation? Generosity, like the patience of a Stoic in the face of adversity, should not be an act that is exhibited, but a private moment that is kept for you and for the person who receives that help. But of course, society modern has taught us that everything has to be shared, commented on, and validated, and boy have we forgotten about the essentials. The first thing you should know is that true kindness doesn't ask for recognition. It doesn't need everyone to applaud and like notifications to come in droves. If you really care about someone, if you want to do good, why would you do it so that everyone sees you? Help it something that it comes from the heart, not the ego. When you do something for others, you don't do it to receive a reward, but simply because you know it's the right thing to do. This concept is not new. In fact, the Stoics talked a lot about how courage and virtue should be aligned with action, not with the opinion of others, almost like a superpower that only you and the person you help know exists. That is what gave them peace. That's the difference between doing good so that others congratulate you and doing good because you know that your life is enriched with every gesture without expecting anything in return, and that peace of mind, friend, is priceless. But why we need to keep certain things secret? The answer is in the ego. Helping with the intention of being the center of attention is like putting sugar on a cup of coffee already sweet, unnecessary. But it seems that everyone does it. We have been instilled that achievements should be shared, but acts of kindness, no matter how small, must be kept in the private realm. What really matters is what you do, not what others think you have done. Imagine that you are a gardener. You plant a seed, water it, and care for it with care. You do not publish photos of the plant growing so that your friends can see how much you are investing in their care. True, because the same happens with kindness. You don't need to be praised for every action. True satisfaction comes from the process and not from the final product. Besides, the less you seek validation, the more authentic your generosity will be. If you are ever tempted to share your generous acts, remember that the most valuable thing about your help is not the attention you receive, but the impact it has on the other person's life. True generosity is in silence, in anonymity. If you do good to win applause, you're not really helping, you're feeding your own ego. So the next time you have the opportunity to do something good, do it quietly. You may not get a like, but you'll gain something much more important. Inner peace. Record yourself by fire. What I am going to tell you, my friend, and that is that acts of kindness do not need an audience, because the most important thing is that the heart knows what is done. 5. Your vulnerability. Have you ever stopped to think how many people know about you, more than you should share? Of course, we all have a natural tendency to open ourselves to show our vulnerability, but have you ever wondered if the doing so is not simply giving others the power to hurt you when they please? The vulnerability that sometimes makes us feel human can also be the key to opening the doors of an unstoppable judgment. And yes, don't get me wrong, it's not about being a callous robot, but there are limits. Or are you going to let your life become an open book for anyone to read the pages they want? It's more convenient for them to share your innermost thoughts and feelings. It's something lovely, even liberating. It's like letting go of a burden and feeling lighter. However, let's face it, who hasn't seen someone suffer a great deal for not keeping certain secrets, or seen someone comment on what you truly thought of a coworker in a meeting, or that other time in a meeting? What happens if, during a coffee chat, you provide intimate information to someone who shouldn't know anything more than your favorite color? You become a simple target. Here is what Stoic philosophy has to say. The Stoics were not zealots about disclosing everything. Rather, they understood that they could keep control of their life by preserving their inner tranquility and without showing others their weaknesses. Authentic implies showing everything, but that's not always wise. Your weak points, your insecurities, or what makes you vulnerable are not always something that everyone should know. Imagine that every personal detail of yours was like an arrow. If everyone knows where your weak points are, those arrows are going to fly in your direction at the least expected moment. It's not about being cold or calculating, but about understanding that when you don't know, just like you wouldn't leave your house with a sign that says, "Here I am to be attacked," you shouldn't go around giving clues about your vulnerabilities to those who don't deserve it. Be selective. Think before you open your mouth. I really need to share this. If the answer is no, then don't do it. Not out of fear of what they will say, but out of respect for yourself and your peace of mind. At the end of the day, it's you who must manage your vulnerability. It's not about being perfect or building walls impenetrable, but it is in knowing when to be vulnerable. The real strength is not in showing every corner of your soul, but in knowing how to save the parts that really matter to you. If you are able to do this, no one will have the power to harm you with something that you have already decided to keep secret. Vulnerability is not something that you should throw to the wind just because someone asks you for a piece. Protect your weak points, because even if others don't say it out loud, everyone has their own interests. Be smart about it. As Seneca said, what you don't share with others can't be taken away from you. 6. Your dreams and your goals. Sometimes something strange happens to you. You start thinking about your dreams, about those goals you make for yourself, and you feel that urgent need to share them with the world. Look what I'm going to do. Swing. You believe that everyone in the world ought to know about your wonderful ideas. Don't get me wrong, I can appreciate the enthusiasm. But have you ever considered whether or not you should really tell everyone what you're about to do? Don't do it just yet, please. For a little time, see yourself as a craftsman, but not one who creates furniture or a lovely cup for oneself. Your house, imagine that you are the architect of your own destiny. Now, how would you build the building of your life? You would do it by announcing every brick you lay, or prefer to build at your own pace, step by step, without needing to receive an ovation for every action you take. The Stoics taught us not to waste our energy seeking the approval of others, and it makes sense, right? Why spend time talking about what you don't yet you've achieved when you could just be working towards it? No. One needs to know until the building is finished and ready to wow. You may be told that you need to tell your dreams for support or motivation, but that's really necessary. The truth is that talking too much about your goals before you reach them can make you feel like you've already achieved them. It's like when you see someone uploading photos of their projects in progress, before you've taken a single real step. It's not a show of effort, it's simply a preview of what they could be. And that's not the same as building something for real. Let's go to the basics. You knew that people tend to make noise about their ideas for the simple reason that they're looking for validation. It's a strange cycle. You share your plans, they tell you how good it was, and that gives you a small dose of confidence, but the truth is that that confidence is not solid. It's like building a house on quicksand. The world should not be the source of your motivation, much less the thermometer to measure the value of your dreams. If you really want your effort to have weight, it is best that you take your time. Make the surprise when it arrives be genuine. Remember, on your way to success there are things that you simply shouldn't tell. Don't tell your fears, your doubts, or your achievements until they're firm, just like a writer doesn't share his novel chapter by chapter before finishing it. You shouldn't be sharing your plans before you've made them a reality. No one has to know anything until you see tangible results. This is the skill of building in quiet. It is not greed. In the end, it is the outcomes, not the words or the promises, that are really important. Keep your hands occupied and your tongue quiet if you really want your aspirations to come true. When the task is over and the world sees what you've produced, you'll have time to chat. Your objectives will be defined by your patience, perseverance, and quiet labor, not by them. As a Stoic philosopher once said, "What matters is not what you say, but what you do." Carl Jung once said, "Words do not build actions." Yes. 7. Your failures. Have you ever felt as though the universe was conspiring against you as you sink into that failure? Stories you tell along the way. If you have something in mind, act, speak little, do a lot, and let your results speak for you. It appears to go on forever. Well, it's inevitable, of course. We've all been there, but neither self-help books nor movies educate us that not every failure requires a viewer. Sometimes it's best to keep your loss to yourself. Sometimes it doesn't need praise or even comfort. What were you thinking while you were in the midst of a storm, with the wind blowing hard and the waves rising? That was more resistance starts to take on water. The first thing you do, you flame the whole port to give them how bad everything is going. Of course, not in the midst of chaos. The last thing you need is a crowd watching you sink. What you need is space to think, to understand what has gone wrong and what to do about it. This is where the Stoic philosophy comes in, that teaches us that emotions, although human, not they must govern our actions. The great Epictetus said that we cannot control what happens to us, but we can control how we react to it, and sharing a failure with those who do not have the ability to help you improve will only make you feel worse. So keeping some failures a secret is more than sensible, because let's be honest, there is something very curious about humanity. If you share your failure with the wrong people, suddenly everyone they become experts in what you should have done, or worse, they become judges who issue sentences that no one asked them for, and you, in the middle of all this, you wonder, I really needed all these people giving their opinion on my problems. The reality is that not all failures are public. There are defeats that are only yours for you to process and learn from them without the inquisitive looks or unsolicited advice. Who needs that? Nobody. Failure is personal. The next time you feel like everything is falling apart, think about whether it really needs to be shared with the world, or if it's wiser to just observe it quietly, analyze it, and then move on. I'm not saying that you live in a bubble, that you become a lonely island. There are times when sharing is healthy if you have someone who can really offer you an objective view and not a destructive criticism. So it's time to open up. Yes, not all friends or family are those someone suitable. Ask yourself, this person will help me find a solution, or simply tell me what I already know? If the answer is the second one, maybe it's best to keep your failure to yourself. The true value of sharing a failure lies in learning. When you share your mistakes with someone who also has something valuable, that to contribute the process becomes an enriching exchange. But in those moments, make sure that the person you talk to has more than just empty words. In most cases, a good friend is the one who listens to you but also pushes you to improve, not the one who drowns you in his pity. So the next time you face a stumble, remember that you don't all failures require an audience. Some are just for you to process, learn, and move on. And when you decide to share it, make sure you do it with someone who really contributes something to your growth, not with someone who is just waiting for the next gossip, because in the end, the way you manage your defeats says a lot about yourself. And sometimes the biggest victory is knowing when to keep quiet. As Brian Tracy says, the one who learns from his failures is the one who really never loses. 8 of your darkest secrets. Have you ever felt like an open book with all those pages full of stories that you would rather never be read? It's funny because we're surrounded by people who in theory should understand us, but in reality we're not even able to understand ourselves most of the time, and there in that chaos mental there are those secrets, things that we would prefer to keep in a locked trunk just in case someone decided to open that Pandora's box. But what happens when you think that the solution to everything is to let them go? Beware of misunderstood catharsis. Let's be honest, the secrets, as much as they hurt, often are the only thing we have left to keep control. No, I'm not talking about those harmless little secrets like what did you do in your last date or why your best friend never realizes you forgot about his birthday. I'm talking about the secrets that really define us, those that, if revealed, could change the way the world sees us. And no, it's not always because people are mean, but because there are aspects of our lives, thoughts, or experiences that just aren't ready to come to light. Stoics, those ancient sages who leave us thinking so much, were very clear about the limits that one should maintain in terms of what they share and what they don't. According to them, there are things that we must learn to control internally without seeking external approval, and in this case, the control of your secrets is an act of wisdom. You don't need to tell everyone your shadows or put that on a silver platter that defines you, but that, if revealed, would only generate more chaos than understanding. Now, how to keep those secrets safe without living with the paranoia that one day someone will discover them? The answer is not as complex as it seems. First, you must recognize that not everyone should know your full story. There are things that are only yours that should stay in the sphere of your mind, because if you don't, you will end up being a puppet of other people's expectations. Imagine that your secrets are a safe. To whom you would entrust the key, do not give your combination to someone who will not treat it with the respect it deserves. If you are not prepared for those secrets to come out, keep the security of your mind as you would with a cherished jewel, and no, it is not a matter of hiding everything, but of knowing when and how to release it. The concept that confessing is freeing at the proper moment and with the appropriate people is merely a pleasant phrase you've heard before. In fact, confession doesn't always release you. Sometimes it locks you deeper in what you were trying to escape. It is a mistake to believe that disclosing all of your secrets would make you lighter. On the contrary, it can have the opposite effect. You need to learn to live with what you have inside of you without letting it consume you, not to deprive yourself of everything. There are times when silence is worth more than any word. Why? Because there are secrets that, if revealed, can no longer be discounted. Once something comes out, there's no turning back. Confidence is not always the act of liberation that they paint you, and in the age of overexposure where all of the world seems to be sharing, even its breakfast, it is essential that from time to time you keep some things just for yourself, so the next time you feel the need to share absolutely everything. Remember that not all secrets are meant to come out. Stoic philosophy teaches us that inner peace comes from accepting what we cannot change and controlling what really matters. Do not let your desire to be or liberated it leads you to give up the most valuable thing you have, your privacy and your sense of control. Keep your secrets safe. There are things that should never see the light of day, and that's okay. As Mario Alonso Puig says, sometimes what we need to keep most is what we are too vulnerable to show. The mystery: we live in a world where everyone has something to say. The noise is everywhere in social networks, in the hallway conversations, in the news. Everyone has an opinion about everything, and yet there is something underestimated, almost forgotten. Silence. Ah, the glorious silence. You have realized that not everything must be said. Well, let me explain it to you. The first thing is to understand that talking a lot is not always synonymous with wisdom. In reality, sometimes more words are just a way to fill the void, an attempt to impress, or even worse, to distract others from what really matters. The Stoics, for example, understood perfectly the power of silence. Marcus Aurelius, one of the most famous philosophers of this current, always defended that not everything you thought should be communicated to the world. Discretion, knowing when to be silent, is an art. What many do not know is that silence is not only a tool of protection for you, a powerful strategy in a world where everyone feels compelled to share every detail of their life. Have you ever stopped to think how many secrets do you keep that you don't even dare to confess to your closest friends? You've realized that there are things that simply shouldn't be told to silence. Then it becomes your best ally. What kinds of things should you keep in your silence? Well, don't worry. I'm not asking you to put your sins in a drawer and forget them. Here I talk about those things that, no matter how much they make you want to let go, should never see the light of day. Your most vulnerable thoughts first. Yes, those dark or not so perfect thoughts. Who doesn't have 1 or 2 moments of insecurity that I'd rather no one knew? Doesn't need to tell everyone your fears or insecurities are there inside you, and they should stay there. Not everyone is prepared to deal with the fragility of others. Much less you should be the first to show it without a filter. Then there are those details of your personal life that in the end only belong to you. Not everyone has to know what your family did to you at the last meeting or what you discussed with your partner yesterday. Your story, not theirs. Not everything must be narrated. In fact, in many cases the mystery about your life is much more fascinating than any unnecessary revelation. Finally, remember that there are people who simply do not deserve to know certain aspects of you. Why share your achievements or your failures with someone who does not even care about your well-being? Silence, so it is not only protection, but also a form of self-worth. In such a noisy world, knowing how to be silent becomes an act of power. Why talk too much when silence can do the job for you? Sometimes the wisest thing is what is not said. Discretion not only preserves your peace of mind, but also allows you to keep the most valuable thing you have, your essence. Don't feel the pressure to fill every space of the conversation. Remember, the mystery is something that can be much more fascinating than any empty word. The experience, my friend, has reminded me that silence is not empty, is a refuge where only those with the wisdom to be silent can find true peace. If you have come this far, write in the comments by mouth die the fish. I invite you to subscribe, activate notifications and comment so that YouTube knows that these videos are useful for people like you. This motivates us to continue creating similar content in the future. I suggest you review the last 2 that we recommend. I sincerely appreciate your time and support. See you in our next adventure.